Women's Month is upon us, and the Art of Superwoman, in collaboration with a number of businesses, will be hosting a phenomenal women's concert in Krugersdorp. It's aimed at honoring the more than 20,000 women who marched to the Union buildings on the 9th of August in 1956 in protest against the application of the pass laws. The concert will bring together high-profile women artists to celebrate the month, and one of them will be Pilani Bubu. She's part of the lineup of artists who will be performing at the concert. Pilani, thank you very much for your time on this Saturday morning. Let's start with this. I read up that you are called the folklore queen. Is that still the case? Do you identify as that?
I know, it's so crazy, but it seems to be sticking. Yes, I kind of have dedicated my time to being a part of a movement or a community of people, or storytellers of our time, who are focused on telling our stories, our African story, kind of focusing on, you know, preserving indigenous knowledge systems, and people who just focus their craft on perhaps parts of our history that still needs to kind of be brought forward for the next generation, a part of our history that's kind of blended into contemporary music, contemporary art. So yes, and I'm still producing albums within that repertoire, Folklore Chapter 2 coming up very soon.
Because Folklore Chapter 1, I mean, there's a song that you're collaborating with an artist that speaks about Oh Mama Betu. Where did you go to find that?
Oh, yes. Folklore Chapter 1 was really sort of matriarchal in a sense. A lot of women's stories told, stories that celebrate women for their strength, for being kind of bearers of life, nurturers of life, songs like Boomche. And Oh Mama Betu was kind of an interlude to talk to that our mothers will never forsake us regardless of the choices that we've made. And because women have this thing, this invisible cord, you know, if someone who's birthed someone has the kind of that invisible cord, we call it in Xhosa, inimba, and they always feel the pain of their children. And so they'll always kind of be the best people to kind of like be nurturers of the world and of people and of nations. And being, you know, kind of womb bearers, they are such an important piece of our lives. And so it was in a way for us to kind of remember, as we think about other things and ills like domestic violence, etc., and sexual abuse against women, that why should, you know, young men and men, older men or men across the board or people as in entirety respect women? Because we're womb bearers, we birth the world. So just kind of restoring that sense of respect to women is something that I really kind of captured in Folklore Chapter 1. There's also songs like Baile that talk about homes and building good homes, respecting women, but also domestic violence is such trauma to children that if we don't build good homes, then we're not kind of growing good humans into the world, because trauma is kind of passed on. And yeah, so the narrative is quite strongly, you know, woman-focused in a way. And then we do take a perspective on kind of men and where maybe some of their plight comes from in engaging with us as women.
So we're having a healthy debate in the studio yesterday, actually, because a colleague was raising a point about some of these skulls from Namibia following the genocide there that are still not in the country, that are based in European museums, for instance. And he said, well, we need to start now documenting. Well, there's always been I guess that's always been in the pipeline, right? But like you mentioned, through folklore, where we do it differently through word or spoken word, which is some of the work that you do. Why is that so important? And what is it about preserving the heritage, the culture, and who you are as a people that speaks to you?
Right. For me, you know, kind of bringing spoken word back into music, because folklore is kind of all the bodies of work that exist in a culture, that capture its customs, its stories that are passed down to generations, and dominantly through word of mouth. But music as a technology has evolved so much that it is kind of like the timepiece. It is the library of our time. And so as artists, it's our responsibility to kind of talk of the times and to share what is in that time that's happening that has formed us or made us. And so African identity and just who we are as people across the world is formed around kind of knowledge of self. And knowledge of self and redefining and kind of imagining ourselves is what brings confidence within ourselves. And I think that's what future generations of kids need. And so when I thought about like how much of the documentation of African history was kind of destroyed, I wanted to be a part of a new archive of stories, and also to bring meaning to our stuff. I think kind of for a long time, Africanness was celebrated kind kind of by the West in ways that were more around like fun and flavor and sexy dance moves and groove. And just bringing seriousness and intention to the content within our music was what I wanted to do. Taking old traditional folk songs, reimagining them, telling that story and finding real meaning behind it. So one of the songs that I do is Krugersdorp. You know, Miriam Makeba had done such a wonderful job of almost pointing that directly back to South Africa. But what do we do with that as a generation? And so, and like thinking about Ikricha in the sense of a healer, not just the song in the way that the rhythm of A and the B section moves and makes you move, but thinking of the song of our ancient spiritual pathways, you know, original gods, Okamata, before colonialism, and trying to understand what are those pathways and those value systems that can bring us back to ourselves. And I think if we looked deeper into our value system, we might find something that slightly opposes some of the systems of the West that actually grow communities in our culture and people in ways that, you know, aren't really pro-people nowadays, to keep it simple because it's so political on a Saturday. So yeah, that's essentially what it was.
Unfortunately, we can't run away from it, right? It's like so our everyday. But okay, let's bring it down a notch. But let me just say what you did with that Mam Miriam Makeba song, ma'am, super bow to your cheese, so spiritual. And thank you for that offering. But you switch it up because then you come back with Ghosted.
Do you remember? I remember that love story interview. It was crazy. Look, again, as storytellers, we're documenting the times, right? And there's so many things that we kind of suffer through in relationships that we as women, I mean, we'll talk about it in our circles. And it was kind of me putting that on in music to kind of see if other people were feeling the same way, the disrespect that people give them when they get ghosted. You know, like, have we as humans struggled to communicate? Can we no longer find our words? And this is what's interesting about this Phenomenal Woman concert is that you're going to get so many styles of music and women telling so many different stories that it's really about holding space for each other as women, to love, to kind of like be vulnerable, to protest, to feel the trauma or to heal each other. Do you know? And so, yeah, Lockdown Love Story was kind of like cathartic, sort of beginning, middle, end of relationship. Sharing that story was just going, what were you going through during lockdown? How were your virtual relationships going? Were you in a lockdown, in a distance relationship? Were you lonely? It's also, kind of one of those things that explore desire and love. So I did kind of move from Folklore Chapter 1 to going, well, this is the time to tell this lockdown love story. I'm also still a woman who falls in love, not just an activist, do you know?
And ma'am, we're here for all of it. As we close up the conversation, I guess, what are you grateful for today?
Man, I'm grateful for life today. I've just been thinking about this interview and wondering, from what level do we kind of direct people to this concert with so many phenomenal women? And it really is just being able to hold space and also to try find ways to stay safe. I have a twin sister. I don't even know if people know, but her house was broken into last night, and just kind of like being at such a close distance to something that threatens your life and an armed robbery is crazy. So I'm just grateful that we can all still be alive in a country that sometimes can feel so unsafe, and to have people in our lives who can save the day in moments of trouble. So I'm grateful for just being alive and kind of being safe in places. So that's kind of where I'm at this morning.
Strength to your sister, and thank you very much for your time this morning. Pilani Bubu is an artist, and you can catch all the details online about that concert coming up in August.